So this conclusion of the Gospel of Mark is a little edgy. In fact, they didn't give you the whole story. There's actually another verse, verse 8, that's often and should be read with this passage. Not to mention the later verses, 9 to 16, which were later added to the Gospel of Mark and are, in fact, part of the canonical Gospel of Mark. And both of these are efforts to spare us what happened next after the women talked to the angel. It says they were terrified, trembling, and they ran away and said nothing to anybody. They were so afraid. End of the Gospel of Mark, the original Gospel. Well, you can see how that wouldn't go over very well. But it's really a powerful ending. Because, if it's possible to get used to the resurrection of Jesus over 2,000 years, we kind of have. Oh, yes, we believe, hopefully, that Jesus rose from the dead. But can you imagine how it must have appeared that first day, that first time? What? I mean, all of us would have been shaking and terrified and not knowing what to think or where to go or what to say. I guarantee that's the way we would have reacted. So the gospel's being very honest. And it hopefully stops and makes us stop and think ourselves about what's going on. In other words, someone who had been part of this realm and leaves, like everyone does, eventually we all die, came back into this realm, into this dimension. Wow! It shakes things up. And of course we believe that God is everywhere, and we know that God entered this dimension, especially in Jesus, in the incarnation. But when he died, somehow he's back in this realm. Not as he was before. The resurrection appearances make that clear. It wasn't the resuscitation of a corpse, and we're not going to be resuscitated like corpses and sit up in heaven around a dining room table. No. It's a whole new dimension. And yet he comes back and brings it to ours. Well, what does that actually mean for us? Well, the second reading gives us a clue of what that does to us, not just for us, but to us. And it's the reading that's used every year on Easter Sunday. From Colossians. If you were raised with Christ, seek what is above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Think of what is above. Your life, you've died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. So not only does he enter our dimension, but we enter his dimension. We have already entered his dimension. As Paul's consistent teaching in Romans and in Colossians here, that through baptism we enter his dimension. The letter to the Ephesians says that we have been given life with Christ, we have been raised up with Christ, we've been seated in the heavens with Christ. I mean, are you feeling it? I mean, are you aware? Are we aware of sitting in the heavens with Christ? We've entered his dimension. As part of his entering ours, we enter his. There's an interpenetration of realms, of dimensions of reality, which is utterly terrifying until we get used to it. More and more in my life over the decades, I've come to see that that's our major task as human beings. Cynthia Bourgeot makes a big deal of it as well. We're transformers. In the Renaissance, they said the same thing. We're like an angel and an animal. Where human beings combine the realms, spirit and matter. And in Christ, that's, increased, made more intense, more accessible. But that's our job, to be channels from above to below and below to above. So we better realize that's our mission, that's our identity, that's our calling, that's who we are. And not be so terrified of it. So in other words, we already are raised with Christ. We've died, as it says, we've died. Are we feeling it? We've already died. Baptism, etc. And we're already risen. So he comes back to our dimension and we go to his dimension. And what do you think the Eucharist is? He is here, in his body. And what does he do? Not just to be looked at, we consume it and we become him. We become his risen body. Are we feeling it? We are the risen Christ. Living in his dimension, as he's in ours. They come together, they interpenetrate, they render each other fruitful and connected and intense. We become Christ. I don't think we're aware enough of this. So I'm going to share a poem. It's one that Cynthia quotes several times in her books, from someone I venture to suggest probably barely half of you, if that many, have ever heard of. Simeon the New Theologian from the Eastern Church before the break. He lived exactly 1,000 years ago. 1,000! So we should have heard of him by now. But he's one of the greatest mystics. And this is a poem of his. We awaken in Christ's body. As Christ awakens our bodies. And my poor hand is Christ. He enters my foot and is infinitely me. I move my hand, and wonderfully, my hand becomes Christ. Becomes all of him. For God is indivisibly whole, seamless in his godhood. I move my foot, and at once he appears in a flash of lightning. Do my words seem blasphemous? Then open your heart to him. Let yourself receive the one who is opening to you so deeply. For if we genuinely love him, we wake up inside Christ's body. Where all our body, all over, every most hidden part of it, is realized in joy as him. And he makes us utterly real. And everything that is hurt, everything that seemed to us dark, harsh, shameful, maimed, ugly, irreparably damaged, is in him transformed and recognized as whole, lovely, radiant in his light. We awaken as the beloved in every last part of our body. You are the risen Christ.